Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. We've got a wonderful show for you tonight. After we check in with our co-hosts, we'll be doing a Kentucky political news roundup. We've got a call to action to support Governor Beshear against the Kentucky GOP. And then everyone's favorite, we've got Doug Price is Right, highlighting how wrong the current congressman from the 6th District is. But first, our quick plug for Progress Kentucky. We are an all-volunteer campaign committed to connecting the dots between Republican-led policies which harm our state while supporting a better political way forward for our Commonwealth. If you care about that mission and might have a few unallocated stimulus dollars lying around, please head to our Secure Act Blue page and make a donation. $1,400, $400, $500, $5. It all adds up, and it all supports our efforts to turn Kentucky purple. And wouldn't that be great? It would be great. But first, let's check in with our co-hosts, see who they are, where they are, and what their protest sign says today. And you there on the internet, you are not off the hook. Go ahead and put your protest sign in the comments right now. And we'll read the best ones right here live on the Facebook Live. So I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, a lovely subdivision in Lexington. And my sign says, help people, not corporations. That's talking to you, Kentucky GOP. Kimberly, are you there?
Yes, I am here this evening. Thanks, Aaron. I'm Kimberly Cecil Jones, and I'm coming to you live from Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Kentucky Derby. And my protest sign says today, Mitch McConnell, bring more money back to Kentucky.
Do it. Mr. Powerful Senator, bring us the cash. Help us out. All right. And then we have got sitting in with us this lovely evening, Nate.
Hey gang, it's Nate Orshan coming live and direct from Kit's and my lovely home here in South Frankfurt. And tonight, my protest sign is a little bit of a musical one. It's me. All in all, you're just another brickhead, Rand Paul.
That is good. And that is an undeniable truth right there. Thank you, Nate. Ken, coming to us from behind the boards. What you got tonight?
Well, I'm coming from Lexington, Kentucky, the north side of Lexington, Kentucky, not so far away from where Denise Gray is at this moment. And my protest sign, I've been thinking about this for about 2 seconds. So I think join us. I think we need all the help that we can get. So like there's a link in there and it says join us. We're not going to do this up by ourselves. So it's a team effort.
Team effort. Go Team Progress Kentucky, which should include you there on the internet. Oh, and Annabelle's got a sign. It says, get involved, stay involved, which I like. And they don't come more involved than Annabelle Nagel, also known as the president of Kentucky High School Democrats, and our social network chair, right? Yeah, that's what she does. All right, so we're going to get into the news because it's always exciting news in the political landscapes here in Kentucky. News of the week, and we are definitely leading off with a very weak example of political leadership coming to us from Kimberly.
Thank you, Aaron. Rand Paul versus Tony Fauci. Who will win this battle? Was it an actual knockout? So masks and theater, doctor versus doctor, with the takeaway being that Kentucky's own Rand Paul once again embarrasses our Commonwealth on the national stage. If you've missed this, guess what? We've got a clip and we're going to go ahead and run it and have a conversation on the other side.
What I'm saying is they have immunity and everybody agrees they have immunity. What studies do you have that people that have had the vaccine or have had the infection are spreading the infection? If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater? No,
You
it's
had
not.
the vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks. Isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater. Let's get down to the facts. Okay, the studies that you quote from Crotty and Sete look at in vitro examination of memory immunity, which in their paper they specifically say this does not necessarily pertain to the actual protection. It's in vitro.
And what studies can you point to that show significant reinfection? There are no studies that show
Just let me finish the response to your question, if you please. The other thing is that when you talk about reinfection and you don't keep in the concept of variants, that's an entirely different ballgame. That's a good reason for a mask. In the South African study conducted by J&J, they found that people who were infected with wild type and were exposed to the variant in South Africa, the 351, it was as if they had never been infected before. They had no protection.
Well, as Joe Girth points out in his column in the Courier Journal, Senator Paul is wrong on the facts, stating that folks who have had the virus or the vaccine have ironclad, steel-plated immunity, as there is currently an outbreak of a new variant at a nursing home right here in Eastern Kentucky, which sent 5 residents to the hospital. Okay, so including one, guess what, that had the vaccine. So that outbreak hit 41 people. 85% of those folks were unvaccinated, had symptoms, while only 30% who had been vaccinated showed symptoms. It shows the vaccine is wonderful and it's working fairly well against the variant. But because we're still seeing significant community spread, the virus is very much still mutating. So the new variants are finding hides in immunity to put people in the hospital and take lives around the globe. So I must also say this, that I was really grabbed, like choked. Not just grabbed, I was choked when I saw this clip in the beginning when I heard Rand Paul talk about the coronavirus. The more he talks, the more he's showing his IQ. It is specifically saying that I believe his medical degree was really written in crayon. So my takeaway from this, folks, is that never, ever, 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 ever listen to Rand Paul and continue to wear your mask and get vaccinated. So Nate, I just want to ask you, like, what do you think about it?
Oh, what do I think about Rand Paul? Rand Paul. I got to assume that his daddy, the infamous libertarian candidate Ron Paul, he named his boy Rand as an homage to Ayn Rand, who is like this canonical inspiration for history-ignorant 13-year-old white boys of all ages, while the surname Paul apparently is a version of the old Roman family name Paulus, which is Latin for small or humble. Boy, did they get that one wrong. For the record, Senator Paul, who is definitely not a humble man, is an ophthalmologist, which means he's an eye doctor. They specialize in a particular part of the body, which means they are no more nor less useful than proctologists. I actually think he would have made a great proctologist because he's such an ass Jewish doctor. JK, no idea what kind of doctor he really is. Although I suspect most doctors care enough about helping their patients' health than running for public office isn't a very high thing to do on their to-do lists. But my point is, Senator Paul needs to lecture Dr. Fauci like I need to teach LeBron James how to shoot a layup. Thank you.
I just feel like you were talking about the names. Well, I'm thinking about the Bible right now. Is there any hope for Rand Paul because the last name of Paul? We know who Paul was in the Bible. He was like a murderer. He was like the most evil being, and then he saw the light. So is there any hope for Rand Paul? Doubt it. What about you, Aaron?
I think this exchange is kind of interesting in a lot of ways. I think what's kind of most telling, though, is that really it's a Rorschach test. I think this is being shared by right wingers, left wingers. Saying, look, Rand Paul got owned by Dr. Fauci, and on the right wing, they're like, oh man, Rand Paul totally owned Dr. Fauci, right? So it's like depending on where you sit on the political spectrum, you saw what you kind of wanted to see there. I mean, it seems to me that on the science, Dr. Fauci was right and Rand Paul was wrong. It seems very clear, but Rand Paul is playing to his base. And they don't care about science, right? The 41% of Republican voters who won't get the vaccine, right? And so now we're in this horrible situation where science has become, partisan. And so we're all going to lose, right? Because of this garbage, coronavirus is not going away soon. When you've got a huge chunk of our population, it's not enormous, but if it's like 20-ish% of people are out there like, I'm not going to get the vaccine because everyone tells me this is no worse than the flu, and I'm not going to wear a mask because Rand Paul tells me I don't need to wear a mask. It just means there's more and more holes in our protection, and there are more opportunities for the coronavirus to mutate and just keep out there, making life harder for all of us. And that's just very disappointing. And I think that there's, I'm sure Rand Paul probably thinks he's right because he's just a smug, arrogant, know nothing, know it all. But it's very, I think, damaging to be playing to that base and telling people to ignore the experts in this situation. So that's my take on it. But, maybe in a couple of years, we don't need to listen to Rand Paul anymore. Maybe he won't be that constant reminder of how misled our voters were. Let's see. I mean, didn't he make a pledge that he was going to adhere to some term limits? Shouldn't he not even be running this time? But at any rate, who knows? Maybe he won't. Has he announced yet? I don't think he's announced. But it seems like every time we do this show, there's a new example of how Rand Paul is embarrassing our Commonwealth. And that is just disappointing. But let's move on to a local story. So we've got story number 2 today, which is the kind of large question of why does the Kentucky GOP care more about tax cuts for corporations than they do about public schools, internet for rural communities, or in general, a functioning government. So if you've been paying attention to the session, they are right now on recess. So there are 2 days left in the session. They will come back next Monday for what they call a veto session. So they'll have a couple of days to overcome any vetoes that the governor might put in place right now. But if you watch what happened, it was this very disturbing display of a disrespect and disregard for democracy, right? They call it votorama. They passed, I think, over 100 bills in the final hours of the session, trying to get them out the door before midnight. And so there are a lot of bills that were passed that people hadn't read. There were substitute bills, just kind of moved forward quickly. But what became, in my reading, the common theme for all of these bills, or so many of the bills, was how much was spent in tax credits, right? So the GOP basically saying, hey, look, you don't have to, if you've got a tax obligation, don't worry, we'll cover it if this money is for a certain thing. And hundreds of millions of dollars in tax credits are are at the governor's desk right now. Jason Bailey, who's the executive director of the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, estimates that cost as $650 million in tax credits, tax cuts. And that is a lot of money for a state like Kentucky that does not have an enormous budget. And of the numbers there, $75 million were spent for film production, even though it has been analyzed and has shown that project or that expenditure is not worth the cost to the taxpayers. It does not generate that much in economic activity. This was the one that got a lot of attention, at least $25 million for private schools in Fayette, Jefferson, and Kenton counties. This is the kind of, we talked about this a lot last week. This is the kind of camel's nose for a voucher program. So basically, our tax dollars will be going to private schools under this situation, $25 million of them, $6 million for the Seelbach. So updating the state's existing historic preservation tax credit from $5 million to $100 million. So really blowing up the program. The Seelbach alone could be worth up to $30 million. That'll be per project, $30 million is available. And that's, a wealthy Ohio developer is going to get our tax dollars to update their very expensive, very nice hotel. It seems like a weird way to spend tax dollars, if you ask me. But, if they match these tax credits with spending that helps real people, then I guess you could argue that they care both about tax credits and people, but they don't. Instead, they cut $47 million from the governor's budget to fix the overwhelmed and outdated unemployment system. So as folks have, I'm sure, seen, there's still people struggling to even get through the unemployment system to get the benefits that they deserve. And that's because, by and large, it is an incredibly antiquated program, old programming that's been unable to deal with this overwhelming rush of demand from the pandemic. So the governor wants to fix it, right? So he's got money in the budget to fix it. And of course, the Republicans would much rather to cut the spending and continue to blame the governor for people who are, having unemployment problems. So again, showing they don't really care about helping people. They cut the raise for state employees. They limited how much Governor Beshear could do to increase rural broadband. They made sure that the vast majority of the significant internet infrastructure investment happens after Governor Beshear's first term, even though this is coming from federal stimulus funds, which would make the case they should be spent now or as soon as practical to help bring internet to those who desperately need it for safe access to school and work. And of course, just need it in our current economy. You have got to have dependable internet. And if you care about Eastern Kentucky, you should see these dollars spent out as quickly as possible, as impactfully as possible. And the governor has his hands tied to actually do that. And of course, because the GB values tax cuts for corporations more than they care about actually helping people, AG Dan Cameron immediately signed up with 20 other GOP state attorney general to threaten to sue Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen over stimulus funding from the American Rescue Plan, basically saying, look, if we can't spend the stimulus dollars on tax cuts, we are going to sue you, Janet Yellen, which is a little insane to me, right? Because tax cuts can play a role, but really stimulus dollars should go to people who will spend it immediately, right? And that's not what a tax cut really is. So it's a problem, but it's a laundry list of tax dollars that are going out the door for our desperately poor state to fund people who arguably they don't need the money. But I think that's my take on this one. Ken, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yes. I would love to just do I've been working in the film industry for a long time, and I wanted to kind of play this clip as I'm talking. So this is exciting. Most local independent film won't see tax breaks from this legislation anyway. It's most of the film in the state, it's too small, and the benefits will be really minor for any independent filmmakers like myself and like us. We make film every week. As you probably don't know, my media production business has really been swamped by the COVID pandemic, and most of my income and most freelancers across the state have really suffered through this COVID pandemic. Advertising and marketing, local news media outlets, local magazine publishers like the Smiley Pete Publishing, events of any kind from theater to music shows have all but ended. Theaters, art galleries, music videos, short films, international presentations, weddings, industrial films, local retail, restaurants. The list goes on and on. So like a lot of this stuff, is we're hoping that it's ending. So we might be seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. But if you look at the super spreader event in spring break in Florida, maybe throw in a few nasty variants. I don't know. We don't know. Maybe Paul knows. I couldn't tell you. But I watched a few of the films that WDRB, this article right here, that was talking about, and they're not really for me. It's not my kind of content. But it doesn't really do our local economy a whole lot of good either. There are a few, if no major productions produced in the state. Yes, some production happens here, but they are projects where everything is above the line, which is a film term, is handled out of state. Above the line refers to a list of individuals whose guide and influence and creative direction, process, and voice of a given narrative of a given film it's related to the money. It's where the money is. When it's above the line, that's the money. And the money's not here. My experience with Kentucky's tax incentives is exploitation. Major actors, gaffers, directors, photography, makeup, wardrobe, post-production, visual effects, and just about every professional hired on a film that is shot locally is often flown in from somewhere else, leaving Kentucky's local talent and crew to be background extras and assistants. These are not well-paid jobs, and they have no benefits. Every major motion picture that I've worked on locally has paid far below average compared to the national wage because we are a right to work for less state. So the tax breaks do nothing but keep Kentucky cheap. Thank you, Aaron, for letting me.
No, thanks for sharing your perspective. I have not been involved with any filmmaking, but I know that a lot of these states have rushed to create these film credits because they've seen them work well, or seemingly work well in places like Georgia, which now has a much bigger film industry than they did before these tax credits were started. They used them in Louisiana when I was living there and saw some benefit. But I think 13 states have rolled back these tax programs because when you actually analyze them, you're not getting the economic activity that you've been kind of promised for that tax expenditure. And again, that I guess is theoretically why you would do tax breaks, right? Is so you could then generate more economic activity, which would then generate more taxes in that economic activity. But if they're not doing that, what's the point? It's really just a handout to those who are who have the right type of tax attorneys, those who have the right kind of lobbyists. I think Doug did a really good job, who we'll hear from later, figuring out like, oh, right, it's pretty easy to figure out which historic renovation property is getting this, specific tax break because there's only one historic hotel that hired lobbyists to it's like if you've got the money for a lobbyist and it's connected and you made some campaign contributions, you too could get a tax cut, right? Of course, these are people that the least need for these tax cuts. If you got your lobbyist on retainer, you're probably doing okay. So this is not about helping people. This is just about helping big affluent corporations at the expense of real people. And that, I guess, is the thing that just astounds me and it outrages me is like, what is the GOP's agenda, right? It's like, take Governor Beshear's power and give away our tax dollars, right? That's really, it seems like that's all they kind of wanted to do this session. And then, for me personally, that's not what I wanted of government. So, Kimberly, do you have any thoughts about that story?
I sure do. Number one, the $75 million going to film production. Hopefully, this is something that a lot of filmmakers in Kentucky that they've been working for quite some time. And, we could even make a film and get some of this money. So it's going to all depend upon who's actually going to be allocating the money and what type of films are we talking about, as far as the $75 million is concerned. I do believe that Louisville could actually be like an Atlanta or where you have Tyler Perry Studios, or of course, the always historic New York or LA. And also Chicago has come very much up on the scene as far as filmmaking and television. The great show Empire that had Taraji P. Henson and Terrence can't remember his last name all of a sudden. Terrence Howard. And, all of that was filmed right there in Chicago. So it could be a good thing for Kentucky. There's been a lot of major movie houses, MGM, Lionsgate, that has been interested and looking at Kentucky. But I think the money would be most effective if there was an actual studio. If some of that money could be taken to have an actual studio where films and movies could actually be made in-house. And then the other thing I want to bring up, you said that it was $25 million for private schools for Fayette, Jefferson, and Kenton counties. Now, I said this before, my daughter graduated from Sacred Heart Academy here in Louisville, Kentucky in 2006. There was no type of monies to help with that. And I would have enjoyed some money being a single mom. But also it goes into this thing like you were saying, Aaron, as far as, just another sneaky, sly way of vouchers. I am totally against giving state dollars to private schools because actually the people that do attend those schools, most of them can't afford it. If they want other people to come to the school that may not have the same type of money, then maybe they need to donate to their endowments and scholarship funds. And I rest my case on that.
Good point. Absolutely. So the idea that we would take state funds when you've got state education, like public education, that's woefully underfunded, and say, no, what we really want to do is take 25 million from our budget and put it into the private schools, seems a slap in the face if you have not adequately funded your public schools. So Nate, tell me more. What are your thoughts about taxes? And who are we robbing Peter to pay Paul, or what's going on here?
Yeah, well, there is a lot of that for sure. But this is really, if I can pivot just slightly, this gets to one of my personal big points of political and policy frustration. And in a weird sense, it's not the Republicans' fault. It's the Democrats, along with all the would-be problem-solving progressive firebrands like my old former junior senator, Bernie Sanders. Here's the problem. The Republicans, they have a dead simple, dead stupid message that they keep shouting over and over again, that taxes are bad, that what we really need to make our society perfect is the fewest and lowest amount of taxes possible. Okay, so guys, how do you pay for all the things government needs to do without taxes? From infrastructure to education, from national security to national parks, all these public goods that neither, by the way, the free market nor big business will ever provide on their own. All of these public goods, they need something. What? They need tax revenue from American people and businesses in order for those services to exist. So here's my point that I wish was the Democratic Party's point. Not only are taxes the lifeblood of government services, okay, also fees, which are like more granular taxes. Taxes are 1,000% patriotic. You call yourself a patriot? Great. Then you should have no effing problem paying your fair share of taxes. Fair share, by the way, I'll define as being progressive taxation, which takes a larger percentage from those who can pay more and a lower percentage, if anything, from those at the bottom of the economic ladder. Let's say it again. Taxes are patriotic. You like being American? Good. Me too. And part of being American is having this huge, powerful government that is providing us with so many public goods, things that the free market would never, ever provide if left to its own devices. So that leads me to my beef, if you will, with the Democratic Party, from uber progressives on down, which is that we're great. We are so good at coming up with typically really useful and just ways to spend tax money, but we are just silent as death when it comes to talking about our patriotic need to pay taxes in the first place. And listen, I know it's a hard sell, especially when the other side, which at the end of the day, they don't give a beep about Americans, all they have to do is keep screaming about lowering taxes. But that's my point. We need a multi-year, a multi-generational campaign that helps remind our fellow Kentuckians and Americans that taxes aren't just important for the functioning of a functional society. They are downright, what's the word? Patriotic. Until we take this on, my fellow Democrats and the general public, we're just going to be at the perpetual mercy of the bone stupid conservative ideology that tirelessly strives to do away with all the lifeblood of government and a functioning society. And that word again is taxes. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, I think it's clear. It's incumbent upon progressives, Democrats, to make the case that taxes are patriotic. When one side has just all kind of been worshiping at the altar of smaller and smaller government, right? Of course, Grover Norquist's famous line that he wants to shrink government down to the size where he can drown it in a bathtub, which very very clear what they want to do, right? They're not pretending. So anyone who's going to be defending the ability of the government to have the resources to be impactful and effective, that falls to us. We know what the opposition wants, right? And this, of course, cutting taxes, cutting spending, and it's this vicious cycle, right? So the more you cut the taxes, the more you have to cut the spending. And most of these states have balanced budget, you have to balance the budget. So you can't overspend. It's not like the federal government. They've got us locked in. And, I think that's why ideas like Elizabeth Warren, who's been talking a lot about her wealth tax, that idea, like, look, in the middle of a pandemic, when you've got Bezos and some of these other, like the Walton family, like just piling money atop money, even while everyone else is doing far worse, it makes the case. It's hard to argue against it. Kimberly, what do you want to add to that?
I would like to add to that you're right on everything, but also I want to kind of backtrack just a little bit. Miss Betsy Foster, who's looking at us on the Jones Report page, it is true. Rand Paul is not a medical doctor. He is an eye doctor. So in essence, how can an eye doctor talk to a doctor of infectious diseases and things of that nature? So I just wanted to make sure that we put the facts out there. Thank you very much.
Not an epidemiologist. We should not listen to Rand Paul about vaccines.
Exactly.
Really, or anything. Let's just not listen to him about anything. All right, maybe about your eyes. That's it. Certainly not policy. Let's not talk about policy. All right. So, hey, we have got our call to action right now. We want to make sure that Governor Beshear gets the message to veto HB 563, which is the tax cuts, for this educational, what are they called? Educational opportunity program. So that $25 million that'll go to go from our state coffers to private schools in those 3 counties. We want to absolutely veto that bill, the education voucher bill, and really veto any of the bills that are taking these horrible, tax revenues away from programs that deliver for people and deliver for corporations. So, send that message to his office, give him a call, 502-564-2611, ask him to veto the private school program and any of these just horrible tax revenue programs that we just described, the one about the film tax credits, the Silbach historic building renovation tax cut that are going to cost us, add them all up, at $650 million in our tax dollars going from us to private corporations, the folks who deserve it the least, who need it the least, and taking it out of the pockets of people who need it the most. So that's what we've got going on. And even as so it's a 2-step process, our call to action. Make the phone call, make sure the governor knows that if when he vetoes these, we've got his back, and then we also need to convince that supermajority in Frankfurt to we need to peel off a few votes. So the voucher vote was close enough that I think it would be very hard for them to overturn a veto. A number of those votes were pretty close, though. So I think we can send a message to your state senator, to your representatives, ask them to stop with their agenda of giving away our tax dollars to private corporations. So that's what we need to do. I think we can do it, but we don't have very long, right? We've got until next Monday basically to make it happen. I think there's some other things that are happening, other bills that are a priority. We should be letting you know that. Make sure you're a member of our Facebook page and group so you can get updates, and also you can join our email list as well to get updates as those are going out. So just let us know how you want us to talk to you, and we will tell you what's going on. That's what we like to do here. So next up, my favorite segment. This means I get to stop talking for a while, and we get to turn to Doug Price, who always does the work and does the deep dive and does the research, and that's why we call it Doug Price is Right.
Welcome to another edition of Doug Price is Right. Progress Kentucky is now a nonprofit 501c4 organization. Our purpose is education, advocacy, and promotion of progressive values in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. As a 501c4, we are not required to provide names of donors on the IRS Form 990. Donations are not tax deductible. During the show, you will find out how to make donations either through our ActBlue account or by mailing a check to our P.O. box in Cynthiana. I live in Harrison County, which is about 28 miles from Lexington. Thomas Massey represents the 4th District and is about 80 miles from my house. Thomas Massey is my congressman, all due to gerrymandering. I think it makes sense to call this gerrymandering. Redistricting is on our radar, and Progress Kentucky will be working with many other organizations to try to make this an open process. Periodically, we will highlight politicians of both parties, and tonight I will be talking about Garland, Hale, Andy, Barr, the 4th of Lexington. I'm not sure where the Andy nickname came from, but perhaps 1, 2, and 3 had the same nickname. Open Secrets is a really good spot to find financial information on all Congress people. The Center for Responsive Politics. I picked out some details from 2015 through 2018. Barr's net worth ranged from $340,000 to a negative $440,000 and back into the positive in 2018 of about $570,000. If you do the math, that's a swing of $1 million in 1 year. I found this interesting and noted that his primary assets consisted of a family trust, stock fund, and money invested in pharmaceuticals and commercial banks. Primary contributors to Andy include banks, farms, pharmaceuticals, and other financial services firms. In 2020, he raised $4.5 million and has about $350,000 in his campaign account. Here are some of his views on various topics. Barr is pro-life. He believes that abortion should be illegal, including even in the cases of rape or incest. If the mother's life is threatened, then he thinks an abortion is okay. Barr opposes using federal funding to support organizations that offer abortions. In a 2012 interview, he said, "I think the vast majority of the people of this country have come to the conclusion that wherever you are on this issue, we should not have taxpayer funding for abortions." That's his opinion. Barr has a D rating from the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. He has a 0 score from LGBTQ plus rights advocacy organization, the Human Rights Campaign, for his LGBTQ plus rights-related voting record. No holds bar on Trump? Not really. Regarding President Donald Trump's comments in the wake of the Unite the Right rally, Barr said that Trump's statement was filled with too much ambiguity. Amid the Trump-Ukraine scandal, where an impeachment inquiry was launched into President Trump, Barr defended Trump's actions, characterizing his request of the Ukrainian president as routine diplomacy. On December 18th, 2020, Barr voted against both articles of impeachment against Trump. On January 13th, 2021, Barr released a statement about the second impeachment of Trump. Here are significant portions of that statement. The president's rhetoric on January 6th, prior to the violence and mayhem at the U.S. Capitol building, was regrettable and irresponsible. Then he said, I disagree with my colleagues who claim that the president's words constituted incitement to insurrection, and then voted not to impeach Trump. Hopefully, this gives you a sense of Barr's political views and on his views related to progressive values in our Commonwealth.
All right. Thank you, Doug Price. And I think you were right. I think you're right. I think Andy Barr is horrible. If I could summarize that takeaway. Very interesting information, though, about his personal net worth. Clearly, he is not a rich member of Congress, and he's a guy that is then therefore going to pay even closer attention to his big campaign contributors. He's not somebody who's self-funded, right? So it's like not exactly shocking that his biggest contributors were the financial services folks, the big pharma, because if you look at his voting record, he's really good for them. He definitely provides, services rendered for those constituents. I did, as Doug was running through a few of his scores, I thought I might look up the LCV score too. So he, from the League of Conservation Voters, he has a horrible, I think 3% score, lifetime score from the League of Conservation Voters. So if you care about cleaning up coal communities, he is not your guy. He is horrible. So thank you so much for that deep dive on Andy Barr. And now we're gonna wrap up our show and throw it over to Kimberly to do so.
Thank you, Aaron. Great show tonight. How would you like Kentucky to be purple? You can make this happen. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. One person can affect many, many more, and we can turn Kentucky purple. What is Kentucky being purple? That is a mixture of blue and red. It makes the color purple. So please, at this particular point in time, we're very, very, very close to maybe 5,000 people on our Facebook account. So if you could please like it, ask all your friends to like the page as well. And we can go up, up, up. It's a number game. Gentlemen and ladies, you know this. So please help us out with that. Also, we know that the Commonwealth needs more kernels of truth, okay, to call out the propaganda and the ridiculous claims of folks like Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, and Andy Barr. We're hatching a plan right now to reach out to our neighbors and mobilize folks around the state to join us and take action. But it's going to take you. Yes, I'm asking for something else. I'm needy. What can I say? But it's going to take you, all right? And some resources. Yeah, it does not just run on ambitions to make Kentucky purple. It takes a well-oiled machine to get there. So we're going to print up some postcards. We're going to add some handwritten messages, and we're going to spread the word with your help. We've got a goal of raising $1,500 for this project. So please consider today. Today is the day to make a donation right now. Go hit us up on Act Blue and make a donation to support this very, very important campaign. And also, we could not make this happen, this great show, the snazz and pizzazz that it has, if it were not for Mr. Ken Howe. So we want to thank him and Couchfire Media for producing. Couchfire Media ignites multi-camera, live stream, fiction narrative, nonfiction educational, informative animation, and commercial video production content. Set your content on fire with Couchfire Media. That's www.couchfiremedia.com. Then also, once again, we could not have a song like we do that, you can't see me in the beginning, but I am like doing the chair dance. Seriously, off of this man, okay? His songs are just absolutely great. So if you like the song that you heard, go check him out. He's got a lot more on natosongs.com. Once again, that's NATO songs.com. And, a couple of us, we do some other little this and that and that and this. And this is my girl right here, Denise Gray. And join her on her show called Conversations with Denise Gray. And how you can find out, it's the second Sunday of every month over there at the Bluegrass Activist Alliance Facebook page. This month, they have been discussing rural Kentucky. It's a great conversation. You'll learn a lot. I know I did. So go ahead and watch the replay. And I would be amiss if I just didn't tell you all about the Jones Report on Sundays at 1 p.m., where we discuss national news and pop culture news and just news in general, whatever we feel like discussing, okay? And my co-hosts are Betsy Foster and the great Mike Royer, and I am your host, Kimberly Cecil Jones. So go ahead on and go over to the Facebook page of the Jones Report radio program and like that page as well. So great show tonight. We always love Dougie. Okay, I always call him Dougie Fresh because he always has fresh information for us. And thank you to Nate and the best host ever, Mr. Aaron Viles. So this week, hey, do something nice for somebody, right? And guess what'll happen? You'll feel good too. So until then, we'll catch you here, same bat channel, 7 p.m. next Monday.